Hello and welcome to the Sound Lab podcast, interviews unedited. On today's show, we have interviews from the Academy is Ruby May, Cormac Thompson R2ViolinCello, and we throw back in time to chat to Wolf Alice. So without further ado, let's start off with our first interview from the Academy is, who have just released their first new record in 18 years. So the Academy is, how are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Good, yeah, not too bad. Thanks so much. So we've been playing a couple of singles of yours, but after this interview, we'll be playing L Train. Tell us a bit about the single, first of all.
Yeah, absolutely. So L Train's I would say one of the more unique songs on the record. I love the song just because I feel like it embraces um, our more recent influences and instincts. The whole album for me, from a vocal and performance standpoint, I feel like is a big breakthrough for me. Just because I feel like restraint is one of those things that a lot of like younger artists don't always have a mastery of, and I feel like that there's beauty in subtlety and in you know and things like that. So I think that I'll train, at least sonically and emotionally, reflects that probably the closest on the album. Lyrically, very much about longing and but also sort of like an acceptance of your environment. It's like you can go to your old haunts, to your old hangouts with your friends or with your, you know, partners, and the floods of memories come back when you revisit these places. Um, you know, though who you are now really does change your perception of your memories, and all of us distort those things and kind of headcanon in some ways our own realities. So this song is kind of like a snapshot into those moments, those feelings of you know of strange obsession and romanticizing uh you know me- memories of old.
Mm, yeah, nice. And as mentioned, that's off your new record, Almost There, which is out now, out today. For those who've not had chance to take a listen, what can we expect to hear on the record?
I mean, it's 18 years since our last record, so you can certainly expect to see growth there. I think one of the things that we did even in the early stretch of the band, where we released the three albums within 4 years or so, 3 years or so, is that we showed uh, growth, and like a fearlessness to experiment with, you know, stepping away from what listeners may have been accustomed to from the prior album. I mean, if you're looking for Almost Here again, like, it's not going to happen. Um, Even just as performers, I mean, I love that record. Obviously, that record means so much to all of us. But sometimes when I listen back to that record, though, I'm like, eesh, like, you know. But that's just like, as a vocalist, you always kind of, are kind of, or just any kind of artist. I feel like that's, I think, also why a lot of bands that have a wide breadth of material, or perhaps a band gets big on an earlier album or earlier single, and there's this sort of like distaste for playing it anymore, and they're like, oh, I don't want to play that one, but it's your biggest song. We certainly do not harbor those kinds of feelings when it comes to Almost Here. I mean, we fully embrace it. But Almost There is really, I think, the biggest similarity with the two records is really from the mindset. It's the most present and aware album that we've had since almost here. Um, and it's very much about the moments. It's very much about the present, while also, being mindful of the past and the story that got you to where you are.
Yeah, no, for sure. And as you mentioned, 18 years since the last record, and you took quite a long break, apart from a little bit in the middle there. What took you so long to kind of get back together and start writing and releasing music again?
I mean, I think a lot of us were at a point, a point in our lives where we were prepared to not do music anymore. For me, personally, I put out some solo music after the band broke up that most of which I'm very proud of as well. And that was an important chapter for me in my life. But, you know, um, a lot of things changed, and um, moving away from music, in some ways it felt like, okay, it's maybe that chapter's over. Maybe we all live apart from each other, so it's not like we have this daily creative connection. um so when Mike came back to the table with this group of demos that just really blew me away, and it really reignited why I love music and creating music in the first place. So along that path of rediscovering my voice, kind of seeing what does the Academy is sound like in 2026. um and I think we absolutely achieved what we were um you know going for when it comes to almost there. And it took a moment to kind of find my footing when it comes to from a comfort level, from a confidence level of like, it's not just, I suppose it's sort of like riding a bike where, you're like, oh yeah, like these are songwriting chops that I had, or kind of a student of the game, which I think is the big difference from when we were first starting and writing Almost Here, is we didn't have really a playbook, just like albums that we loved and studied, song structures, but we weren't like trained or anything for songwriting. We just did it. But since then, we've learned a lot of tricks and learned a lot of things and learned all the rules, so we know where to break them and when to, be intentional about our decisions. It's just more intentional on the new record. But it took stepping away for me to find that again, and to really cherish it and like hold on to it dearly. I think right now art is so important in our culture across the world, particularly in an environment that is devaluing art on the daily. So to have that part of your daily routine, to be creative, to be artistic, to just have some kind of an outlet, whether there's an audience or not, is such an integral part of being human.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And I'd like to talk a bit about the writing process as well. So for you and the band, how do tracks normally start off?
Yeah, good question. It depends. It depends on kind of what the source is. Like when Mike brings something to the table, um, it's often acoustic based, which is kind of how I write as well, where we'll kind of start with the structure on an acoustic, and build from there. Or I was messing around with a charango, which is a South American ukulele sort of looking thing. But and that's how L Train came about, just because I was messing around in the studio with a different instrument. So oftentimes it'll be spawned from the instrument itself, or more often than not, the thematic idea, whether it be melody or, let's write a song about this, or, this is on my mind, so this is what we're going to write about now. Um, the Butcher, our drummer, he's a really fantastic and creative writer as well. He's very different from my approach and Mike's approach to songwriting. So he'll often have, like more full and landscapes built out from a production standpoint, and like really groove driven. So songs like Bulls in Brooklyn from Santi, um, Same Blood from Santi. I mean, he has a few songs that he was the brainchild of for. So yeah, it really just depends. But for me personally, I typically start with like a lyrical idea or a melody, and then I mean, for years I wasn't actively writing my own songs, but I always had ideas, and I'd always like do little voice notes here and there, on the commute to the real person job, um, and everything like that. And then obviously just like about the house, just making up jingles for whatever product needs a jingle, just for fun, just for funsy, annoying my family constantly with my little jingles. But other than that, it was interesting to like dive into that pool of voice notes and be like, whoa, like there's some cool stuff here. Or wow, that was, at least I, got it down to know that it wasn't good. So it really springs from organic, kind of traditional roots there.
Mm. And I'm sure the writing and the recording process has changed since you started releasing music back in the mid noughties. How has that changed for you?
As far as the production and
Yeah, and the writing process as well.
yeah, I mean, everything's so much faster. I mean, you can actualize your idea into, a fully produced vision very quickly. So I think that in many ways it's a lot simpler. Although, Mike lives in Arizona, so making this album, we made it here in Chicago with the soon to be legendary Snow Ellett. His band Football Heads in the UK right now, actually. Um, but yeah, I mean, living far from your creative partner, it isn't the same kind, it doesn't garner the same limitations as it used to, obviously. But again, even so, the best work that we did and the most productive moments, the most magical moments in the studio and the writing process happened when Mike and I were together, um, in person. So I feel like there's some certain sort of like mechanical elements of the songwriting process that more like maintenance and things like that, or small ideas here and there, but the true magic of the creation happening in the room, there really is nothing comparable to that.
Yeah, I can well imagine. And you've got a couple of weeks of little bit of a downtime before you head out back on tour across North America. I bet you can't wait to be doing some more shows.
Oh yeah, it's exciting. Leg two, the first leg of the tour was incredible. um we're hitting Mexico on this round, as well as Canada. I see all of the, like, there's an outpouring in my DMs and on comments on socials, and about coming back to the UK, and that's absolutely something that we're itching for. So you guys have to keep playing the songs and building the awareness back up for us to have it make sense. Especially right now, I mean, touring is an expensive venture, especially if you want to put on like the show that I want to put on the same quality show in London, or like Birmingham, as I would, in Chicago or LA or New York. So those are important things to us. So we're really hoping that we can get back over there as soon as possible. But tour is really where we thrive. Right now is interesting from a promotional standpoint too, with everything being so online. Um, because we're so spread apart, and I'm more comfortable with the social media stuff. It's been very me driven, as far as like visuals and things like that for the promotional aspect, which is so exhausting, and like I don't like it. I mean, I like it because it's fun, and I like to edit, and like we do all of our own crap. We like edit in house. I do editing. Our friend Tyler does editing. Adam, Mike, so it's very DIY in that route, right? But it's and as a result is very kind of draining. I'm just excited too because I think that a lot of what draws me to this band is the element of like the individuals within it, and our the spectrum that we cover is pretty wide when it comes to many things. But the personalities in the band, I'm really excited just to hang with my friends and film some fun stuff for people who can't make it to the shows, and hopefully we can just expand this tour and expand upon the release of this album.
Yeah, I bet. And you're being taken towards the end of May at the moment with your release dates, but I'm sure you'll be touring throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, the goal is to choose wisely. I think we're not trying to um oversaturate anything. And really the beauty of this tour is that it's truly the marriage of almost here and almost there. And the cool thing about that is that you can continue sharing that beyond any anniversaries or beyond anything else, because there is a correlation between these two records in a lot of ways. Um, so taking that out on the road, I want to play in front of as many audiences as possible in as many countries as possible. Um, but there's a lot that goes into that. So logistically speaking, and particularly in the turbulent times that we're in, and the uncertainty surrounding the day to day, or minute to minute, really. Um, it's stressful to, and I tend to, um, I try to compartmentalize it in my life and like separate, you know, but art is really a reflection of your environments and of your experiences. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of angry albums coming out in the next couple of years, and our next one may be one of them.
I can't wait. I can't wait to hear a bit of maybe screamo on your next record.
Hey man, if you ever heard our early stuff, I mean, it was like post-hardcore, like the EP before Almost Here. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but we unearthed some old videos of us at like a teen center, and I was like, damn, like we were this close. It could have gone Glassjaw, like it could have gone Thursday. Instead, it went more like Third Eye Blind, and uh more pop centric, melodic, which which thankfully, and it might have just been a subconsciously selfish decision for voice preservation over the years, even though a lot of my peers during that time and a lot of bands in our circle, and I kind of blame like that sort of Max Martin, Kelly Clarkson, like, since you've been gone, here's the chorus, here's the money note, I'm gonna sing at the top of my peak. And then like guys, over the years, it's just like, oh, so we're gonna drop that song a step and a half. And so as much as I know that there's a lot of screamers that or dynamic singers that can do rough vocals as well. I don't want to be diminutive by saying screamers, um but there's an art to that, there's an art to screaming, and I really wanted to when I was young. So we'll see what happens on this next one. I'm always up for a challenge, and I've been listening to a lot of Static Dress lately, thanks to my son, who's a huge fan of them. So yeah, I mean, it's just cool to see, like, how 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 different influences can kind of creep in, and so you never know.
Can't wait. And I'm gonna go check out that EP of yours.
Yeah, I think it's just the Academy EP. It was before we were the Academy is, but I mean, it's like I was, we were like 19, 20, so like, proceed with caution from a quality standpoint, but the energy was certainly there.
And I hope you enjoyed the interview there with The Academy Is to talk about their new record and more. Now, we are all over social media, so come and find us at The Sound Lab, yes, on all the socials. You can also check out the website, thesoundlabuk.co.uk. So while you go and find us on all the socials and give us some follows, we've got our next interview from Ruby May. She's just released a new EP, and we had a chat with her all about it. So, Ruby May, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, yeah, not too bad, thanks so much. So we've been playing a single of yours called Make You Feel Good. Tell us a bit about the single, first of all.
So we wanted to create. I wrote the song with some writers I work with who I love, Glenn Roberts and Rich Turvey. We wrote the track in Liverpool, in a studio called Kempston Street, which is a really cool space. I wanted to create a song that was just full of joy and people could just dance to and enjoy and forget about the troubles and stress and just let go for a minute. And also it's called Make You Feel Good. So it's also about the people in your life that don't hold you back and there's no negative connotations towards, and just appreciating them and being grateful for the people in your life who make you feel good.
Yeah, nice. Sounds good to me. And that's coming off your debut EP called Movement, out 20th of March. What can we expect to hear on the EP?
Lots of soul. I love soul, so I wanted to create a soulful record. Lots of bopping. Bopping is required when listening to this EP. Yeah, just happy sounds. Happy sounds.
Good. Yeah, nice. So the sound that you've made with this EP, is it the sound you wanted, or is it kind of how it turned out as you were writing and recording it?
Yeah, I think it sort of just happened really. Because it was the songs that are on the EP were written like the first sessions that I'd ever had with Glenn and Rich. So it was like a new sound that was just sort of being born. And I remember thinking, oh, this is the kind of music I want to create when we were writing the songs. So yeah, it was just sort of happened really, and still making the same music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure you've wrote more than what's made it onto this EP. What happens to those now? Is it a case of seeing if they fit further down the
Well,
line, or
we'll
trying
have to
afresh when the
see.
time
We will have to
comes?
see if they appear. I'm sure they will, yeah.
No, that's that's good to hear. I'd like to talk about the writing process as well.
Okay.
So for you, how do tracks normally start off?
Um, I usually get the music before the lyrics. Though recently I have thrown that method out of the window, but for this EP, we just sort of jam. Like there's a song on the EP called Putting It Off, which is a sort of like skanky reggae-esque beat. And that was just born through a really funky bass line that Rich was laying down, and then the lyrics came afterwards and the topic of the song. So it's definitely when we write together, it's usually music first, which is quite fun actually, because you never know what you're going to end up with. You just have the music first, and we just sort of jam it, quite old school. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you have that music ready, how easy or difficult do you find it to create those lyrics to add to the music you've created?
I think it depends on the topic at hand. So it depends if it's something that I've been thinking about that I want to write about and I've had ideas for it already. Or if it's like something really deep and like emotional that you want to write about, it can be quite hard. But Glenn is amazing at helping me get my like thoughts into song form. I have to say I wouldn't be able to do it without writers sometimes. Um, yeah, I just it's a long process, but it's a fun process as well when you're with the right people.
Yeah, I can well imagine. And people will want to see you doing some live shows, and you've got a date in London at the end of
I
April.
do.
I bet you can't wait to be doing it.
Yeah, we just announced it today. So it's Camden Assembly, the 28th of April, with the band, which would be fun because we haven't done a band gig for a while. I think this might be the first one of the year, which is crazy even saying that. Yeah, and we'll be playing the EP, we're playing some new stuff. So you should definitely come down. It's gonna be exciting.
Yeah, nice. How ready are you for doing it? Is there thoughts in place ready to do it?
We've got all the EP songs ready to go because we've played them actually a few times before. Um, we might throw some new songs in there, I think. So we might have a little rehearsal beforehand. But I'm just really excited because we haven't played a gig for ages. And I love to play live. Like that's my favorite part of being an artist. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah, I bet. And I would assume then from your answer that you also do stuff just by yourself. How
Yeah.
do you cater yourself and your music and your sets based on whether it's a band or whether it's just you?
I think it depends on the venue. So if it's a smaller venue, I usually do acoustic. And I think because I've been playing acoustic ever since I started, like that's how I started out doing like pub gigs or whatever, like on my own or open mic nights. Um, and a lot of bussing, I think I've just become like accustomed to it. I definitely prefer playing with a band, I must say. It's a lot more fun, and like they're my good mates as well. So sometimes I get really sad when I'm on my own, just playing acoustically. Though sometimes I really do enjoy it because they're more intimate shows, and you can sort of talk about the songs more, and they're less like polished. You can sort of, go off on a tangent if you wanted, because there's no drummer behind you. But I definitely think I prefer playing with my mates as well. Yeah.
Yeah, good. And with just the one date booked in so far, I'm sure you'll be planning and trying to do some more. What is the plan for more live shows this year?
Well, we actually are playing a festival later this year, but it's all the way in Cornwall. So if you're Cornwall based, definitely come down to that. It's called Rock Oyster Festival, which should be really fun. I think we're going to stay for the whole thing as well. But we're playing on the Friday or Saturday, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I can't quite remember. And that's a really cool lineup actually. Like Cooler and Gang are playing, and Scissor Sisters are playing. But yeah, we're probably going to have some headline shows as well. Manchester, London, possibly. But there definitely is plans, so just keep an eye out for those headline shows because they will be happening soon, which I'm excited for.
Yeah, good. Can't wait. Are you hoping to go overseas at some point as well?
I would love to. I'm not sure when that would happen, but I would absolutely love to. I'd definitely love to play in Europe or the States. That would be really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. And I'd like to talk about show day as well. So for you, what does a show day look like from the moment you get up until after the show's finished?
I'd say if I'm with my band, then I usually travel down to Leeds because that's where they're all based. Like we did the tour last year in November, so we all traveled there. I traveled down to Leeds, which is a long train journey for me. It's like 2 hours on the train. I've got all my gear with me, carrying like guitars and suitcases for my like stage outfit. And then we all meet, and then we usually hire a van if we're traveling like a long distance because there's 6 of us, so it's easier to get a van. There's a little Xbox in the van that we hire, which is quite fun. So we usually play GTA on the way. And then lots of laughs, lots of tunes playing. I'm usually in control of the playlist because I think I have the best taste, just saying. So I usually in charge of the music. Yeah, get to the venue, we sound check, get some food, have a couple of drinks. Just gear ourselves up, really. It's usually always a laugh. I don't like it to be stressful because then I get stressed from performances. So we like to keep things as chill as possible if that's possible, because sometimes it is stressful. Especially if it's a tiny venue with a tiny little green room, which we're very much used to at this point. 6 of us squeezed in a green room. Yeah, it's quite chaotic.
Yeah, no, I can well imagine. And when it comes to the moments just before you step on stage, is there anything you have to do, or is there anything that you have to not do before you step out on stage?
I don't really have any sort of rituals like most artists do. Obviously, I like to quickly warm up my vocals. We usually just like play loads of like hyped up music to get us in the mood. That's usually what gets me going for a gig. I don't sort of have any script. I like to just go in completely natural and just be myself, and then I enjoy it more that way. I don't put too much pressure on myself. I just enjoy it because it's the most fun part of playing. Yeah.
Yeah. And with that hyped up music, is there a go-to artist do you have to listen to?
Ooh, it depends what sort of mood I'm in. Like obviously I love like old school soul records. Or sometimes my drummer was saying this the other day because it was quite funny. And there's that Kaiser Chiefs tune, because my name is Ruby, and there's a song called Ruby. Sometimes we'll play that because it's quite funny, and that really gets me going. Yeah.
Yeah, and I having typed your name into my emails to see what emails I could find, there's a band called Demons of Ruby May. So
I've seen them online. That's quite funny.
And I hope you enjoyed the interview there with Ruby May to talk about her new EP and more. Now, we are also on Spotify, where we have a Spotify playlist if you're not already listening to this podcast on there. It's called Fresh, and it brings you 150 brand new up-and-coming artists that we feel like you might just enjoy yourselves. And if you want to check that out, search Fresh by The Sound Lab on Spotify, or head to the website thesoundlabuk.co.uk and click on the Fresh playlist button. So while you go and check out our new playlist to save and listen to later on, of course, we've got our next interview from Cormac Thompson. He has been around for quite a few years now, releasing covers. Well, he's just released his first original track, and he's got more on the way. So, Cormac Thompson, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you, Jim. How are you?
Yeah, pleasure is all mine. Thanks so much. And we've been playing a single of yours called Defenseless. Tell us a bit about the single, first of all.
Well, it's my first ever original song, and it was recorded in November 2024, actually. So it's quite a long time ago, but we've built up a lot of sort of promotion around it, as it's my first original song. And it's kind of about sort of falling into teenage mental health sort of stereotypes where you're feeling a bit down, and particularly mainly for boys who sometimes feel that they can't speak up about how they feel. So yeah, that sort of topic there, yeah.
Yeah, good. And we have been playing covers of yours for a few years now, but now that you've taken the step into doing your own music, what was it that triggered you to go, okay, I need to take that step now from doing the covers to releasing music?
I think now that I'm a bit older, and my voice has changed, the money, especially if I want to make a career out of music, is all when you write your own music. There's only so much you can do when you're doing covers. And I think it's something that I'm passionate about as well. I enjoy songwriting. I enjoy singing my own song rather than singing someone else's song. There's quite a sort of satisfying element to it, which I definitely think is a big aspect to why I'm doing it, yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I was going to ask you this a bit later on, but you've mentioned about the voice change already, which happens to all of us.
Yes.
What was it like for you to go from that soprano treble voice that you've had, and we kind of know you from like with BGT and that, through to the voice that you now have?
Yeah, well, obviously when I was younger, I was doing all the high stuff, as you said, and it was more of a different genre as well. I was doing more classical music, sort of classical crossover on that boundary. And then obviously when my voice changed, I couldn't really sing as high, I couldn't sing as high. And also I got a bit older and a bit more mature as a person. So I kind of switched my genre alongside alongside my voice changing. But there was a year period where my voice just did not sound nice at all. And even what it sounds like now will be completely different to what it sounds like in, say, 3 years' time. It's still developing and I'm still getting used to it, even though it's been nearly 3 years now since it's properly changed. But yeah.
And everyone's voice is very different when it comes to the transition between the treble down. Mine was about over the course of a week, where it went from treble right down to bass, and it was really quick. Whereas some, like you said for yourself, it's can be a longer period.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, now that you've started off releasing your own music, you must have plans going forward with some more music. Where are you at going forward and more music coming our way?
Well, I'm in a band at college, so I'm studying music at college and I'm really, really enjoying that. And I've made some mates there and we've started a band. But I want to kind of try and keep my band separate to my solo career. I think there's definitely more original songs in the horizon. Nothing's actually planned yet for me as a solo artist, music-wise. But there's definitely some ideas that I've got and stuff that I want to do and some people that I might want to work with. So I think maybe in a couple months' time, hopefully we'll have some new stuff that can be put out there. But yeah, for now I think just kind of focusing on what I'm doing at college and sort of getting some band stuff down. But yeah, no, I think in the future I'll definitely do some more original music, 100%.
Yeah, good. Make sure you send some of that band music my way.
Yeah, I will.
And is it going to be along the same similar sounds to where you've ended up with the solo career, or have you taken it in a tangent and trying something completely different?
I think, is that with the band, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's similar to what sort of I'm doing with the solo stuff. A bit less, sort without being blunt, but a bit less depressing. Lots more upbeat music that I'm doing with the band. Um, but it's sort of we've done a lot of different stuff from like Radiohead to Weezer. Um, so it's very versatile what we do in the band. But again, then in the band as well, we're still trying to find our sort of genre and which lane we want to go down. I think we're leaning more towards sort of indie rock, and a bit more alternative maybe. But yeah, no, again, it's just wherever the wind takes us and see. Yeah.
Yeah, no, good. And let's throw back in time, shall we? Back to 2020 at the age of 11, when you signed your record deal with Decca Records. So tell us a bit about how you got to that stage and what it was like to actually get that record deal.
Yeah, no, well, obviously I was so young, so I couldn't really comprehend how much of a big deal it was. But essentially, I got it from during lockdown. My grandma and granddad live in Northern Ireland, on my mum's side, and I used to do like FaceTime calls during lockdown because obviously we couldn't see them. And I'd sing on the FaceTime calls and sing some of my grand's favourite songs, and then she actually fell asleep with her iPad on her lap and it fell and cracked. And obviously, because all the shops were closed, she couldn't get it fixed. So, but she had access to YouTube on her laptop and she'd watch other music videos and stuff. So my mum had the idea, why don't we sort of as a little lockdown COVID project as well, but also so my gran could watch videos of me singing as many times as she wanted. We recorded a few videos of me singing and put them on YouTube. None of them really went that viral. I think the most views I got was like 500. But my mum reposted one of the YouTube videos on her Facebook, and then it got seen by a famous organist called Anna Lapwood, and she reposted it on her Facebook, and then that was seen on her Facebook by an A&R lady at Decca Records, and she wanted to get in contact with me and my parents, and then yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and you've come along quite a long way since then, and you must have some aspirations of things you want to achieve in the music world. What's one thing that you really want to do?
I want to go on tour. I think I'd really enjoy that. I want to have my own sort of tour. I'm touring as a solo artist and going around nice big venues, but that might be several years in the future. We don't know. I just have to keep working hard and see where it takes me. But yeah, no, I think definitely going on tour. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anywhere that you really want to go and play at some point?
Nothing springs to my mind straight away. I mean, the Co-op Arena in Manchester, to be able to perform on that stage would be incredible. I've watched a few concerts there, and every time I've been there, I've sort of looked at the people on stage and been like, oh, I wish that's me one day. So yeah, I think that's the only place where I've really thought, oh yeah. But I mean, I don't really know that many venues, not in England, so I'll have to do a bit of research. But yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And coming back to the writing side of things, especially for Defenseless, which you co-wrote with Henry Maybury. Tell us a bit about your writing process and the way you write music in particular.
Yeah, so the way I do it is pretty similar to how most people do it, to be honest. I'll find a chord progression first, whether that's on guitar or piano, just depends how I feel. Most of the time it's on piano, but for Defenseless it was actually on guitar and Henry found the chord progression. And then I'll voice record that on my phone, just me going around the chord progression, and then I'll start sort of humming melodies over it. The melodies come to me first, and then once I've got, say, like a do melody in my head, a few lyrics might come to mind, and then I can kind of just build on that, and then you start seeing a structure coming together, and then, yeah, there you go, you've got a song.
And I hope you enjoyed the interview there with Cormac Thompson to talk about new music and more. Now, if you are loving all of today's interviews, then you can hear them again on our international radio show. It's called Future Hits, and it brings you all of today's interviews in an edited form, alongside a load of new music and a live session too. And if you want to check that out alongside all the other radio shows that we do, head to the website, thesoundlabuk.co.uk, and click International Radio Shows. So while you go and check out our radio shows by the Sound Lab, we've got our final new interview, and it comes from R2ViolinCello. They have been busy releasing new music, and, well, we had a chat with them all about it. So R2ViolinCello, how are you?
Extremely well. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Pleasure is all mine. So, at the end of last year, in December, you released a new EP called Mission Impossible. Tell us a bit about the EP, first of all.
Well, basically, we had a dream after leaving London and moving to Thailand. We wanted to release an EP which was basically full of film music, and they resonated with everyone, tunes that people knew inside out, and that connected with millions of listeners. And we wanted to try and create something which was basically just for violin and cello, a sort of a Mission Impossible, Duel of the Fates, Imperial March reimagined, if you like, just for two instruments. And that was the aim. We started out. We enlisted the help of someone called Simon Parkin to write all the arrangements for us. They were like unbelievably difficult arrangements. They came. We learned them. We recorded them. We were really happy, and we thought, job done. And then we listened to them a few times, and we actually thought, you know what? There's something missing. At the end of the day, it was just violin and cello. And as hard as we tried to make the EP, as impressive as we could, it just wasn't the full scale orchestral version, which is amazing. We've got John Williams and Lalo Schafran, two of the greatest, film composers of all time, who had written these massive full orchestral scores. And then here we were just trying to condense that down into two instruments, violin and cello. And we were thinking, how can we compete with that? We've done everything we can. So we'd done the recording, and then we got put in touch with someone called Albin Dominic, who's a sort of a sound designer, if you like, based in India. And Albin was incredible. He's this, like a sound architect. He was just able to just fill out all the textures and create these amazing sort of just this amazing atmosphere and textures with electronic beats and drum kits and sort of digital choirs and all sorts of effects and instruments that we'd never even thought about. And it came back to us, and we were like, whoa, this is exactly what it needed. Basically, it just sort of turbocharged everything that we'd done. And it just made everything more exciting, gave everything more depth, more drama. It was really spectacular. We couldn't have achieved like what we got to at the end without Albin's help. It completely transformed the whole project. So we ended up with this sort of just incredible sound world that we never set out to achieve at the beginning. It just sort of morphed into that and evolved. The more time we spent with it, and we'd chip in with ideas, he'd come back to us with suggestions, and then by the end, it sounded like, it definitely doesn't sound like just violin and cello, but essentially that's how it started out.
Yeah. And tell us a bit about the process from taking these full orchestral versions and stripping it right back down to just those two parts, because there will be instruments playing certain bits that you will have had to have transposed onto your instruments. Tell us a bit about that process.
Yeah, do you want to say?
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends how far back you want to go. If we go back really, really to the beginning, back into COVID, we wanted to play together, but it's incredible even though the violin-cello is such an obvious duo, there is literally hardly any music for it. I mean, you've got Kadai, you've got Ravel, you've got Martin, you know, Handel, Valvorsen, I guess Brahms double. You know, there's a few absolute classic masterpieces that, you know, every violin and cellist plays, but there's really nothing else. And most people, when they do a duo concert, you're scrabbling around playing bits of Bach two-part inventions, and you might arrange something yourself. We had a crack at arranging a couple of things, Samuel Coleridge Taylor. But actually what we realized very early on is that there just is, you know, you're asking about the origins. We just thought, well, what would really highlight this incredible duo in the most fantastic way to really complement what an amazing partnership it is. And we both have this great love of film music, having both played on a lot of original soundtracks, Reese with the London Symphony Orchestra, me with various London session orchestras. And so we already had this connection with films. And then when we decided to do this project, obviously the process of condensing these scores is absolutely monumental, and it really became a bit of a challenge thinking who is going to be the best arranger to take this on board. Because back to your question, you know, what was part of the process? I mean, you really have sometimes up to 40 orchestral parts which you're trying to imitate on only 2 instruments, and some of these arrangements, when they came through the post or through email, we would absolutely be bracing ourselves, because Simon had done such an exquisite job of really including as many instruments as he possibly could. And some pieces, especially Imperial March, for example, it feels like you're literally playing every single note on the entire fingerboard on every single string. Reese is doing fingered octaves. I'm doing octaves all over the place. It's so unbelievably full. So I think they
And difficult.
And extremely
Super
difficult. Extremely difficult. And I think Simon couldn't have done anything else in terms of getting as many instruments as he could into our parts. It was just that when you do a project, when you take on something like this, you have to make sure that it's either not better than the original, but you're presenting something in a light which doesn't take away from the original. So we knew that in terms of Simon, we were doing as much as we possibly could on 2 acoustic instruments. And that's why we had to, you know, when you listen to the original scores, they are vast, they're epic, they're iconic, they are absolutely, you know, they fill stadiums, that music. And we thought, right, we really, really need to just add something which is going to make sure that we haven't taken anything away from the original. And what we've ended up with is, we're so proud of it. It really feels like we're kind of presenting the violin and cello in a way that I've never heard before. I mean, it's so epic, but at the same time, it's quite intimate in its, you know, in the way that it's presented, because you've got the violin cello as soloists, but you've got this monumental sound world around it, and it's kind of ticking hundreds of boxes with these arrangements.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you mentioned what the 4 tracks are on this EP: Mission Impossible, Duel of the Fates, Imperial March, and Schindler's List. But there is so many scores and tracks you could have picked to release and do your own versions of. What made you pick these 4?
Oh, I mean,
we actually did 16 arrangements. We did 16.
Yeah, we did 16. We did a lot from Star Wars. We did all kinds of tracks. You know, we've done Miss Lou from Pulp Fiction. We've done just all kinds. Pirates of the Caribbean, Spider-Man, Witches of Eastwick. In fact, Pirates of the Caribbean is going to come out in just a few weeks on March the 25th. That's our next single, followed shortly after by the Witches of Eastwick. But it's really, I mean, it really just comes down to which you feel, or which we felt were the most successful tracks. I mean, all of them kind of connected. We connected with all of them in our own way, but we just thought we chose 3 which had these kind of sound design behind them: Duel of the Fates, Schindler's List, and Mission Impossible. But we also wanted to keep Imperial March in the EP because that has nothing. That is just purely violin and cello, and that is probably the most difficult one. And it was the most sort of successful in its own right. You know, it sort of it holds its own just as the violin and cello, and I think it's sort of the one that we're most proud of, actually. And we wanted to keep it on the EP just simply because that was how the project started, and that was how it was meant to finish. And it's had nothing else sort of done to it. It hasn't been amplified or, you know, improved in any way. It's just us, violin and cello, playing at the very best we could.
What's super fun about this journey? I mean, when you start, we've got so many projects going on at the moment, and you know, you've got to be really moved by a project in order to do it. But what's been exciting about this film music project is it's taken us in directions that we've never ever ventured into before. For example, we're making music videos, and we come from a very classical background, and making a music video is something that we've absolutely never considered before. But it's sort of created this entire dimension to what we do now, and it's I love being part of the creative process. It's just opened up so much to us, and it's spurred us on to do all of our next projects, which we're already working on.
Yeah, good. And you mentioned you've done you've worked on 16 tracks now for yourselves, but you must have a list of of more that you want to try and see if they work for you. Have you got that list?
We haven't got a list as such, but we are thinking of branching out into a few different genres. You know, definitely pop music is something now that we think we might go down that route for a little bit. We might, yeah. It's really it's interesting. Like when you do something like this, and it opens your eyes to really what's out there and what listeners want as well. You know, classical musicians, we tend to be in our own bubble a lot of the time, and you know, we tend to sort of regurgitate the same old stuff from, you know, 200, 300, 400 years ago, you know, time and time again. And there's a lot of music out there which can be played by violin and cello and, you know, backing tracks, and it can be done really successfully, as long as the imagination is there and the creativity is there, and the people working with you are the right people, and the whole creative process is just on point. And I think we don't know where it's going to take us, but it's going to take us places we didn't think we would go, that's for sure.
It's interesting because we're doing all these interesting projects, but at the same time, we actually run an international concert series out here. So we're still doing our Beethoven quartets, and you know, Reese is about to do a recital on Saturday, which is completely solo Bach. He's playing Chacon and Bieber, and it's just really wonderful having this other dimension in your life. I guess I was in a string quartet for about 10 years, and Reese was member of the LSO for how many years? Years and years.
17 years.
17 years. And I think, you know, it's a difficult, you're so focused on what you do in that world. It's quite difficult to think outside the bubble. I don't think it would have happened unless we'd moved countries, actually, and unless we've met some really specific people out here which have been really central to new directions that we've gone in. But you know, it's just a slice of what we're doing right now. You know, as I say, the new projects that we're working on are involving, you know, our own arrangements. I don't know if I should be saying it. Should I be giving the game away? We've got, yeah, we've been basically anything which is phenomenal compositions which really speak to us. That's it's giving us our inspiration for our next projects, which should be out soon. Everything is to be announced. I'm not sure if it's the right time yet, but we're busy bees over here, doing all of our arrangements, and yeah, we're having a really great time with it.
Yeah, good. And you obviously did your EP launch show back in December, and you mentioned about a show coming up for you shortly. But are you hoping to do your own shows again this year?
Yeah, well, this is sorry.
Yeah, no, I think we I think we'll play as much as we can. I mean, we want to. Obviously, we're based in Asia right now. We're in Bangkok, and you know, we feel very much like we're in the center of everything. Certainly in Asia. So we're looking at touring, maybe through Japan, over to Hong Kong, Singapore, China,
South Korea,
South Korea.
Taipei. That's the main places that we're working on at the moment. But what's amazing about this show, as again, like it's so different from our classical world, but it's not just me and Reese anymore performing. We have, you have a lot of technicians with you. You've got sound guys, lighting technicians. It's turned into like a whole show, and it's amazing because you can play it from anything from a small concert hall to stadium size. I mean, because such is the way it's been written, and so we're in the middle of waiting to hear back from quite a few people at the moment to see which direction it's going to go in. But it's definitely an adventure that we've never gone near before. Yeah, it's exciting, really exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know I can talk to you guys all day, but I've got one final question for you, and that is about ostrich racing. So I'm reading I read your press release that I was sent, and it all of a sudden turns into that your daughter races ostriches on school sports day, it says. Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, it's difficult in Thailand because we come from, the UK is absolutely gorgeous for all the things that are going on in it. I mean, one of the great things is how beautiful it is and how clean the air is. And, we've got our mountains, and Wales is gorgeous, Scotland, England, everything, Ireland, it's all amazing. And, when you come to a really smelly, noisy, insane a city like Bangkok, you're kind of constantly looking for these bits to, rejuvenate your soul and nature and your connection to earth and all of that stuff. And what we have here is elephants and jungle and snakes and palm trees and monkeys. And so, of course, when this kids go and do school trips and things, it's all to do with
and less health and safety.
A lot less health and safety. I mean, she went on a sports day where they went on a mud slide into this huge, big muddy puddle. This is when she was about 6 years old. And then the guy who owned the farm thought it'd be a great idea to take a wheelie bin full of giant toads, and he poured all of the toads inside this muddy puddle. And then their teacher said, let's play a game of guddle around in the mud, find a toad and put it on your friend's head. So that's the kind of things that they do on their sports day. And then, of course, there was racing ostriches, holding crocodiles. Giant monitor lizards are walking around the parks like they're ducks. They're literally bigger. They're 6 foot long, and they're just wandering around like, I don't know, pigeons. It's quite different over here, but it's a lot of fun.
And I hope you enjoyed the interview there with R2ViolinCello. And now we're going to go back in time to 2021 to chat to Wolf Alice, because we like doing that on our shows, and we've done just that. So, Joff from Wolf Alice from 2021, how are you?
I'm good. Not too bad. Not too bad, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks very much. First things first, the first single from your new record is called The Last Man on Earth. So what can you tell us about the track?
So the track was... so we kind of developed the track from a demo that Ellie sent over a couple of years back now. And I remember I was walking through a park in London, and I got an email from her saying, I've got this new song. So I put it on my headphones and walked through the park. And it just struck immediately and just went, this is going to be a really important song for us. And we went and recorded it sometime later in 2020 in a studio called ICP in Brussels. And here it is here it is. It's here. It's out. I can't believe it. It's bizarre. Yeah, absolutely. And as mentioned, that's off your new record, Blue Weekend, which is out in June. What can people expect to hear when they get to take a listen? I hope people have learned by now to kind of expect somewhat the unexpected from us. I think we like to jump around a bit, and we like to experiment with different sounds, kind of different. I wouldn't say genres specifically, but different kind of subgenres within the kind of indie rock and pop bracket. So I'm hoping there's something for everyone there. Yeah.
Good. That's great to hear. And obviously, in the middle of a pandemic at the moment, how did that influence and affect the record?
Well, it was all written by the time the pandemic struck. So we went off to record in January 2020. Yeah, January 2020, over in Brussels. And yeah, we were there for about a month or so, I think, before Brussels lockdown, or Belgium lockdown. And we were faced with a kind of awkward dilemma of, do we come home, put the album on hold, or do we stay there under lockdown and finish it off? And, you know, consulting with the studio, and they consulted, you know, with their local authority, etc., etc. And they kind of gave us the go-ahead, should we want to? And we went, yeah, let's kind of button down the hatches and crack on with it, really. So it was a welcome distraction from what was quite a bizarre, scary bit of history, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, and it just meant that, you know, being there in lockdown, when you're recording a record, you're kind of in a state of somewhat lockdown, but not to be able to, you know, go out and blow off some steam of a Friday night, as we like to do. It really meant that we were focused in a level that kind of we haven't really been before. You know, we wouldn't be going out, we wouldn't be doing anything else, and living in the studio as well. It was kind of always on our minds. So we really, really honed in. So we're hoping that was a benefit.
Yeah, definitely. And you've been releasing music as Wolf Alice for over 10 years now. How have you kind of developed and worked towards where you are today?
Oh, just by doing it, really. Doing it, making mistakes. I think we've always been pretty brave, and we've always been willing to put ourselves in positions that maybe, you know, felt scary at the time, but, you know, if we hadn't have done, we wouldn't be where we are today, really. A kind of trust in our own instinct and tastes. I mean, essentially, Wolf Alice is a kind of, when we're writing music, you know, the big test that we say is, do we like it? Is it music that we would want to listen to ourselves? And does it evoke the emotion that the song is intended to do when we listen to it as individuals? So that's kind of the biggest test. And as long as we're doing that and making music that we think is, you know, we think works, then, you know, we're going to carry on doing it.
Good. I guess that's the main thing. Yeah, and obviously the main kind of bulk of your music came when you became a four-piece between like 2013 and 2017, with a couple of albums, a couple of EPs in there. But there's been a bit of a bigger gap between your last record and now. Was there a reason behind that?
We were absolutely knackered. Is the answer to that question. Yeah, I mean, we didn't really have a gap between the first and second records.
No.
We finished touring the first record, had 3 months in a studio, a rehearsal studio, where we kind of worked out the next record, and then we went and recorded it, and then we're back on the road. So by the time it came to December 2018, you know, that was us. You know, we were absolutely done for. We'd, you know, been on the road, been recording albums, been doing promo for nigh on 6 years at that point, 5-6 years. And we needed a break. Admittedly, it wasn't that long a break, considering we, you know, had about 3 months off before we went and met up. I think we got bored, to be honest, and went, all right, let's do this again. Let's make some music. And admittedly, this record has taken a lot longer than the other records. I think we had been afforded some time. And we were keen to make the most of it, really. But, you know, this, I think, obviously the record would have been out earlier, and we would be out, I think we would have been in America at this point, you know, playing shows and getting out there. So the pandemic, you know, did affect it adversely in that way as well. So, interesting time.
Yeah, most definitely. But touching on touring and doing gigs, you've got a nice run of dates booked in for January next year.
Woohoo!
I bet you can't wait.
Yes. Yeah, I really, I think, the live experience for people that have, the gig bug, I don't think there's anything else like it. Just, whether it's tens or hundreds or thousands of people all in one room, sharing in an experience together, and kind of getting lost for a couple of hours with each other is just something that is just absolutely beautiful, and something that I've sincerely missed. So I cannot wait to get back out there. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, and you've even added some extra dates because some of the dates have already sold out.
Yeah, we haven't actually experienced that before, I don't think, gigs selling out in a day before. But yeah, we had, I think, 7 shows sold out in the first day. So, yeah, unbelievable. I think somehow we've returned from 2 years of absence, bigger than we were when we left, which is odd.
People have missed you.
Yeah, good trick if you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And off the back of that, with all being well in the world, I'm sure you'll be wanting to get out further afield than just the UK.
Yeah, I mean, there have been tours booked in the background all over the world for the last year, really, and everything just keeps on getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. So, as soon as we are able to, we will be out on the road.
Yeah, and obviously this year as well, you have been able to squeeze in a different sort of gig with kind of like a mini Glastonbury, as I'll call it.
Yeah, teeny little Glastonbury. No, exactly. So it's a live stream event that will be happening some point over the next couple of months. I don't have the exact date. I really should do, but I don't. You can check that out on the Glastonbury website, I'm sure. And yeah, we're very lucky to be one of, I think, 9 acts that have been asked to play. It's on Worthy Farm. I think they're going to be putting people in interesting and different locations across the space. So it should be interesting for sure.
And I hope you enjoyed the interview there with Joff of Wolf Alice. And that's the end of the show for another week, I am afraid. But don't you worry, we will be back next week with more interviews, unedited. But if you can't wait until then, social media at The Sound Lab US on all the socials. And you can also check out the website, thesoundlabuk.co.uk. And we'll be back next week for another episode of Interviews Unedited. Goodbye.